Good morning, you guys. This is Letty, Patino, Independent Ambassador with Plexus Worldwide. So this morning, I kind of wanted to do a video on a book study that I'm doing right now on John Maxwell's The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. He's a really good author and he's got a ton of books out. So if you can get your hands on this book, I would highly recommend it. So the first law that he mentions for laws of invaluable laws of growth is the law of intentionality. You have to be intentional when it comes to your personal growth. Do you have a plan? Do you currently have a plan for personal growth in your life? And if you don't, he recommends that you get one. A lot of you know that myself am very goal oriented, and there was this concept that he talks about in his book or in this chapter about switching your mindset from being goal oriented to being growth oriented, because he mentions that when you only focus on goals and hitting those goals, yes, you might hit some of those goals, but chances are you're not going to hit all of them. But if you switch your mindset to growth, then as you're growing, you're going to be hitting those goals. So there's a little bit of a mind switch there, mind-blowing switch there. He talks about 8 misconceptions about growth that are kind of slowing us down in our personal growth. And they're just these, he calls them growth gaps. So the first one is the assumption gap, and that is that we as people automatically assume that just because we are growing older, that we are achieving personal growth. And let me tell you, that is not true. Not true. And I'll give you an example why. I know grown men and women that still have the mental capacity of a freshman in college. Just because you're growing older doesn't mean that you are growing mentally, spiritually, or emotionally. You have to go out of your way to achieve that kind of growth. You need to stop waiting around for growth to happen and start making it happen. Be intentional. The second gap he talks about is the knowledge gap. People just don't know how to grow. And they just assume, here, I'm gonna grow, through the hard knocks of life. And yes, while you might learn through the hard knocks of life, you're better off if you are growing intentionally and growing and actively searching for that knowledge for growth. That means that you decide where and in what area of your life you need growth in. You get to choose what it is you're learning, and you get to follow through with discipline and at your own pace. The third gap was the timing gap, and the timing gap is you just don't feel that it's the right time to begin. It's never going to be the right time to begin. He mentions the law of diminishing intent in his book, and that states that the longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater the odds that you're never actually going to do it. So if you're waiting around for the right time, chances are the right time is probably not going to show up. And there's a big difference, you guys, huge difference between deciding that you want to do something and actually following through and doing it. You might decide that you want to grow in a certain area of your life. You might decide, sure, I want to change my diet. Sure, I want to start exercising. But if you don't actually follow through and do it, you're not going to accomplish that growth in that area of your life. And, you've seen sometimes as far as timing goes, you know, the timing gap and waiting for the right time, a lot of the time we allow fear to control when we do stuff. And I know you guys have seen me use the hashtag do it afraid, and you've probably seen a few other people using the hashtag do it afraid recently. And there's just, you know, there is just certain things in life that are going to scare you senseless to do. But if you don't just grow a set and do them anyway, you're always going to be stuck in that same spot, and you're not going to reach your full potential of what you could be doing. So stop letting fear control whether you achieve growth in your life or not. The fourth gap, growth gap that he mentioned, was the mistake gap. Everybody, myself included, is afraid of making mistakes. There is not a single person out there that I know that isn't afraid of screwing up or making a mistake. And we're all going to do it. But the point is that you grow from it and you move on. So don't stop yourself from growing because you're afraid of making mistakes, because you are going to make mistakes along the way. We're human, you know, we just do. The fifth gap is the perfection gap. The perfection gap is for all those people that say, I have to find the best way before I get started. You're waiting around for the best way to do something. And you have to sometimes stop and realize that in order to find the best way, you just need to get started, because you're not always going to have this clear-cut vision of where you're going to, or how things are going to go and how things are going to, you know, progress along the way. So if you're just waiting around for the best way to do it, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to get started, and it eventually, you know, the journey's just kind of going to unfold, and you're going to be able to see it as you move along and as you take those steps for growth. The sixth gap was the inspiration gap. How many times have you heard someone say, I really want to start working out, or I really want to start doing XYZ, but I just can't get myself motivated to do it? We're not always going to be motivated to do it, you guys. Sometimes we just need to do it, and the motivation will follow. It's not, you know, it's not always going to be, you're not always going to feel gung-ho about doing stuff. You know, you're not always going to have that excitement to do things, but the excitement comes later as you start to see the progress. Let me tell you, cardio, not my favorite thing. But do I do it anyway? Yeah, because eventually at some point I realized that once I get better at it, once I get better at running, I'm going to be freaking proud of myself, and I'm going to be motivated to do it more and more and more. So motivation, it just comes. It'll eventually come. So don't wait around until you feel that motivation to get started with personal growth in your life. The seventh growth gap was the comparison gap. The comparison gap was you being afraid that others are better than you at what it is you're doing. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a very, very good thing. You kind of want to surround yourself with people that are better than you at what you're trying to accomplish in your life and what you're trying to do. Because chances are you're going to learn from these people. They're going to push you to want to be better. And that's how growth is going to be achieved. You know, if you are, you know, I've heard it said a few times, if you're the smartest person in your group, then you need to find a new group, because that's not forcing you to grow. That's not going to force you to be better. So it's not a bad thing. It's actually a very, very good thing to have people surrounding you that are better than you at what you want to do. And the eighth gap is the expectation gap. We all expect things for some reason to be easier than they really are. Growth doesn't come easy. Growth is hard. And I don't think there's any successful person out there that would ever tell you, yeah, I achieved this level of success super easy. You have to work hard at it, and you have to be willing to show up prepared with the right attitude and be willing to put in the hard work and take action. So he talks about intentional growth and how there are 4 different ways that you can be intentional about your personal growth. And the first way is to ask yourself the hard question. Are you asking yourself, where do you want to go in life? What do you want to do? You need to ask yourself those questions. No, you're probably not going to have all the answers to those, but it's at least a step in the right direction. The second way to achieve intentional growth is to just do it now. Stop waiting around for later. Later is, they call later the death of dreams. The word later is the death of dreams. Don't wait around for later, because later isn't going to happen. You need to do it now. And the third way to be intentional about growth is to face your fears. And that is your fear of failure. That could be your fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how things are going to go. Your fear of what other people are going to think of you for doing certain things. You just have to go beyond, take action beyond those fears, because those fears are always going to be there. They're not going to go away, but if you continue to allow them to stop you from doing what you want to do, you're not going to reach that level of success you want to reach. So you need to take action despite those fears. And then the last way is to stop growing by accident. So sometimes we just, let life teach us lessons and we grow from those lessons, but you're in a lot better position if you are intentional about the growth that you want to achieve in your life. So if you want to be a better mom or a better dad, if you want to be have a healthier life, if you want to be a better business person, then you have to be intentional about that growth and stop trying to learn by accident. You need to schedule time out for yourself. You need to, whether it's an hour a day, whether you're reading books, whether you're watching videos, whether you're listening to audiobooks, whether you are attending meetings or attending conferences or trainings, you have to be intentional if you want to grow, to go out of your way to find that training for yourself, and stop depending on growing by accident. So that was, those were some of the main points in chapter 1. And I just, I would really encourage you, if you have the extra money, it wasn't super expensive. It's a relatively inexpensive book. You can get it in an audiobook or a Kindle, or just get a hard copy of it. It's a really, really great book, but I'm going to be going chapter by chapter and trying to do a small video summary of what each chapter, you can learn from each chapter, for all those auditory learners out there like yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye, guys.